George Griffin, the only human at the Galactic Academy, was once again failing his xenobiology midterm, while his alien classmates snickered, unaware that the dumb Terran would soon unleash a terrifying mental power that could annihilate their entire species. Nestled among the stars, the Galactic Academy was renowned across the cosmos, attracting the brightest minds from a myriad of worlds. A kaleidoscope of alien species filled its halls, their colorful appearances almost as diverse as their intellectual pursuits. Amidst this vibrant tapestry, George Griffin stood out like a sore thumb, a solitary human drowning in a sea of extraterrestrial brilliance. In Professor Xylax's quantum mechanics lecture, George struggled to keep pace. The tall, purple-skinned instructor's words seemed to dance just beyond his grasp, taunting him with their complexity. Holographic displays flickered, illuminating foreign equations that made his head spin. As he squinted at the incomprehensible symbols, a sinking feeling settled in his gut. "Look at the stupid human," Umbra, an arrogant Eliani, whispered loudly to his cohorts. "He can barely keep up with the rest of us." The Eliani were notorious for their condescending attitude, viewing their telekinetic prowess and superior intellect as proof of their dominance over lesser species. To them, humans were little more than primitive savages, stumbling through the universe with their laughably limited minds. As the class ended and students filed out, Professor Xylax called George aside. The alien's shimmering eyes narrowed with concern. "George, your performance is lacking," Xylax said bluntly. "I fear you may not be cut out for the rigors of the Galactic Academy." George's face burned with shame, his pride wounded by the professor's words. He couldn't let it end like this. He refused to be the laughingstock of the universe, the human who couldn't hack it among the stars. "Please, give me another chance," George pleaded, desperation seeping into his voice. "I can do better, I swear it." Professor Xylax sighed, his long fingers drumming against his desk. "Very well, but if you don't show significant improvement by semester's end, I'll have no choice but to expel you." George nodded solemnly, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on his shoulders. He knew that if he failed, it wouldn't just be his own future at stake. The reputation of his entire species hung in the balance. As the first and only human to attend the Academy, he carried the hopes and dreams of Earth on his back. But what no one knew was that hidden deep within George's mind lurked a secret power, an ability unknown to the professors or the snooty Eliani, a power that could reduce entire solar systems to ash and twist space-time into shapes unseen, a power that would show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. And they would all soon learn to fear the day they underestimated a human. George poured himself into his studies, determined not to let the condescending smirks of his alien classmates beat him down. He spent late nights hunkered in the library, poring over dense textbooks on quantum theory and intergalactic history. He sought out his professors during office hours, pleading for extra help and clarification on the most mind-bending concepts. But no matter how hard he tried, George always seemed 2 steps behind everyone else, especially in Professor Xylax's advanced telekinesis seminar. The day of the practical midterm arrived, and George's palms were slick with sweat. The exam was simple: lift and manipulate progressively heavier objects using only the power of the mind. Umbra stepped up first, a cocky grin plastered across his angular face. With a casual flick of his wrist, the Eliani prodigy levitated a massive boulder like it was a pebble, swirling it through the air in intricate patterns. Professor Xylax nodded approvingly, clearly impressed by his star pupil's display. Then it was George's turn. He screwed his eyes shut, channeling every ounce of mental energy into the small rock before him. Beads of perspiration dotted his brow as he strained, willing the stone to rise. But it barely twitched, mocking his efforts. Umbra and the other Eliani erupted into laughter, their mirth echoing through the chamber. "Look at the pitiful human," Umbra crowed. "He's a disgrace to this institution. He doesn't belong here among his betters." George's face burned with humiliation, tears stinging the corners of his eyes. He couldn't take it anymore. The constant ridicule, the feeling of inadequacy. Ignoring Professor Xylax's shouts for him to return, George bolted from the classroom, his footsteps pounding against the gleaming floors of the academy halls. He ran without direction, blinded by frustration and shame, until he found himself in an unfamiliar wing of the building. The corridor was darker here, lit only by the eerie glow of bioluminescent plants lining the walls. George's curiosity got the better of him, and he pushed open a heavy door, revealing a hidden chamber filled with strange artifacts and advanced technology. In the center of the room, sitting on a pedestal, was a shimmering orb that seemed to pulse with an inner light. George felt drawn to it, as if some invisible force was guiding his steps. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the orb's smooth surface. Suddenly, a blinding flash engulfed him, searing his retinas. Energy surged through his veins, setting every nerve alight with searing power. Unbeknownst to George, the artifact was no mere trinket. It was a remnant of a long-lost human civilization, a tool designed to awaken latent abilities within its wielder. And as the light faded, and George blinked away the spots dancing in his vision, he could feel something stirring deep within him, something ancient and powerful, a force that would soon reshape the very fabric of the universe. As the sun rose over the Galactic Academy, George strode into Professor Xylax's classroom with a newfound swagger. The events of the previous night had left him buzzing with energy, his body thrumming with the power of the ancient orb. He took his seat, ignoring the snickers and whispers of his classmates, his eyes fixed on the front of the room. Professor Xylax cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the assembled students. Today we will be delving into the intricacies of advanced telekinetic manipulation. Who would like to volunteer for a demonstration? To the surprise of everyone in the room, George's hand shot up. Umbra let out a derisive snort, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. "This ought to be good," he muttered to his cronies. "Watch the human make a fool of himself again." George stepped up to the front of the class, his heart pounding in his chest. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind to the heavy boulder that had thwarted him during the midterm. To the astonishment of his classmates and Professor Xylax, the boulder rose smoothly into the air, hovering effortlessly at George's command. But he didn't stop there. With a flick of his wrist, George summoned a dozen other objects from around the room, chairs, desks, even the professor's prized collection of rare crystals. They swirled around him in a dizzying dance, their movements precise and graceful, as if choreographed by an unseen hand. Umbra's jaw dropped, his eyes widening in disbelief. The other students gasped and murmured, their expressions ranging from awe to envy. Professor Xylax stepped forward, his voice trembling with excitement. "George, this is remarkable. Your progress is astounding. Please stay after class so we can discuss this further." As the other students filed out of the room, Umbra shot George a venomous glare. He couldn't fathom how the once struggling human had suddenly become a telekinetic prodigy, but he was determined to find out. Professor Xylax leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "George, I must know, what brought about this incredible transformation? How did you achieve such mastery in such a short time?" George shifted uncomfortably, his mind racing. He couldn't reveal the truth about the orb. He had no idea what the consequences might be. "I've been doing a lot of intensive training and meditation," he lied, hoping his voice sounded convincing. "I guess it finally paid off." Professor Xylax nodded slowly, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You have the potential to be one of the greatest telekinetic minds in the galaxy." As George left the classroom, he could feel Umbra's eyes boring into his back. The Eliani was like a bloodhound on a scent, relentless in his pursuit of the truth. George knew he would have to be careful. One slip-up, and his secret would be revealed. Over the next few weeks, George's abilities continued to grow, much to the astonishment of his classmates and professors. He excelled in every subject, his mind absorbing complex concepts with ease. Umbra watched from the shadows, his jealousy and suspicion festering like an open wound. Late one night, Umbra crept into George's dormitory, his footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. He rifled through drawers and closets, searching for any clue that might explain his rival's sudden success. And there, hidden beneath a pile of textbooks, he found it, the ancient orb, its surface pulsing with an eerie light. Umbra's heart raced as he hefted the orb in his hands. He recognized it instantly as a powerful artifact, the kind of technology that was strictly forbidden within the Academy's walls. A slow smile spread across his face as he realized the opportunity that had just fallen into his lap. He would bring this evidence to the board of directors, exposing George as a cheater and a fraud. The human would be expelled in disgrace, his reputation ruined forever, and Umbra would once again reign supreme as the Academy's brightest star. George burst into Umbra's dormitory, his eyes blazing with fury. The orb was gone, and he knew exactly who had taken it. "Where is it, Umbra?" George demanded, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. Umbra smirked, holding up the glowing artifact. "Looking for this, human? I always knew you were a cheat." George's hands clenched into fists. "Give it back, Umbra. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Oh, I think I do," Umbra sneered. "And I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too." With a roar of anger, George lashed out with his mind, sending a telekinetic blast directly at Umbra's chest. The Eliani flew backwards, crashing into the wall with a sickening thud, but Umbra was quick to recover, his own psychic powers flaring to life as he retaliated. The two rivals clashed in a fierce telekinetic battle, furniture splintering and walls cracking under the onslaught of their mental might. George's raw, untamed power, fueled by the orb's energy, slammed against Umbra's refined technique and superior control. As they fought, the ancient artifact began to glow and pulsate, reacting to the intense psychic energies being unleashed. The air crackled with electricity, and a strange humming filled the room. Their battle spilled out into the main courtyard, drawing the attention of students and faculty alike. Gasps and shouts of alarm echoed through the crowd as they witnessed the incredible display of power. Professor Zylax, sensing the disturbance, rushed to the scene. His eyes widened in shock as he saw George and Umbra locked in combat, the ancient orb hovering between them. "George, Umbra, stop this at once!" Professor Zylax shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of psychic energy. But the two rivals were too engrossed in their battle to heed his warning. Umbra, seeing an opening, launched a vicious telekinetic blast directly at George, but at the last moment, George managed to deflect it, sending it careening towards the ancient orb instead. Time seemed to slow as the blast struck the artifact, causing it to shatter into a million glittering pieces. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the orb, engulfing the entire Academy in its searing light. When the light finally faded, George and Umbra found themselves no longer in the familiar surroundings of the Galactic Academy. Instead, they stood in a strange, alien landscape, surrounded by the crumbling ruins of an ancient civilization. Towering structures of an unknown metal rose up around them, their surfaces etched with intricate glowing symbols. The air was thick and heavy, and a sickly green light seemed to emanate from the very ground itself. What happened?" Umbra asked, his voice trembling with fear. "Where are we?" George shook his head, trying to clear the fog from his mind. "I don't know, but I think that orb was more than just a source of power. It must have been some kind of key to an interdimensional gateway." As they explored their surroundings, the two rivals began to realize the true scope of their situation. They were stranded in an unknown world, with no idea how to get back home. And all around them, the ruins of the lost civilization seemed to whisper secrets of a power far greater than anything they had ever known. George and Umbra exchanged a glance, their animosity momentarily forgotten in the face of this new challenge. They knew that if they were going to survive and find a way back to the Galactic Academy, they would have to put aside their differences and work together. But as they delved deeper into the mysteries of the alien world, they couldn't shake the feeling that the true nature of the orb's power had yet to be revealed, and that their journey had only just begun. As George and Umbra ventured deeper into the ruins of the alien world, the remnants of a once thriving civilization began to paint a picture of its tragic downfall. Holographic projections flickered to life, revealing the history of a race of powerful psychic beings who had mastered the art of interdimensional travel. Their towering spires and advanced technology stood as a testament to their greatness, but the crumbling structures and eerie silence spoke of a darker fate. "They were consumed by their own ambition," George muttered, his fingers tracing the intricate symbols etched into a fallen pillar. A civil war tore them apart, scattering their knowledge across the multiverse. Umbra nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. "We need to find a way back home before we suffer the same fate." The two rivals, their animosity temporarily set aside in the face of this shared adversity, followed the ancient clues left behind by the long-dead civilization. Glowing glyphs and shimmering energy trails led them through twisting corridors and cavernous chambers, each step bringing them closer to their goal. As they approached a massive portal, its surface pulsing with an otherworldly light, a sudden chill swept through the air. A spectral figure materialized before them, its form shifting and writhing with barely contained rage. "You dare trespass in my domain?" the spirit hissed, its voice echoing through their minds. "I am the ruler of this world, and I will not be denied my rightful place in the multiverse." The spirit lunged at Umbra, seeking to possess his body and harness his psychic powers for its own twisted ends. George, realizing the danger, thrust himself between them, his telekinetic abilities flaring to life. "Umbra, watch out!" George shouted, deflecting the spirit's assault with a burst of raw power. "It's trying to use your telepathy against you." Umbra, his face contorted with the strain of resisting the spirit's influence, stumbled back. I can't hold it off much longer." George's mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. In that moment, the full extent of his human ingenuity and adaptability shone through. With a surge of telekinetic energy, he ripped a nearby control panel from the wall, his fingers flying over the alien controls. "I've got an idea," George said through gritted teeth, sweat beading on his brow. "If I can create a psychic feedback loop, we might be able to trap the spirit in a pocket dimension." Umbra, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope, nodded. "Do it, George, whatever it takes." George's hands blurred as he manipulated the ancient technology, weaving a web of psychic energy around the vengeful spirit. The air crackled with power, and the spirit howled in rage as it found itself caught in the improvised trap. With a final desperate push, George sealed the pocket dimension, banishing the spirit from their reality. But the strain of maintaining the feedback loop proved too much for his human physiology. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground, his mind shattered by the effort. Umbra, now free of the spirit's influence, stood over George's unconscious form, a battle raging within him. He could leave his rival behind, return to the academy alone, and claim the glory of their discovery for himself. But as he looked down at the human who had risked everything to save him, a begrudging respect stirred in his heart. With a grunt of exertion, Umbra hoisted George onto his shoulders, the weight of his decision bearing down on him. Step by step, he dragged his unconscious rival back through the portal, the shimmering light engulfing them both as they crossed the boundary between worlds. They emerged in the familiar halls of the Galactic Academy, their battered and bruised forms a testament to the ordeal they had endured. As the faculty and students gathered around them, whispering in shock and awe, Umbra and George exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. Their rivalry, once a source of bitter conflict, had been tempered by the fires of their shared experience, but even as they stood united in that moment, the scars of their battle would forever shape their destinies and the fate of the galaxy itself. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.